They say the unexamined life is not worth living, but what happens when the very act of examination threatens to unmoor you, to detach you from everything you thought was safe? Today, we begin a journey not into history books, but into the history of the human heart, guided by the very language we use to tell our tales. We delve into a narrative that explores betrayal, self-worth, and the seismic shift that occurs when one stops begging for recognition and starts demanding it. Our story, born from the simple act of a glass being tapped at a Thanksgiving table, is a profound meditation on the locus of control, the point from which we draw our strength. It is a modern-day allegory for the scholar, the learner, the individual who must choose between the comfort of an old, cramped narrative and the vast, terrifying freedom of a self-authored life. This script will interweave the raw emotional truth of family betrayal with the exacting clarity of English grammar, the immutable wisdom of ancient philosophy, and the ineluctable pull of self-determination. The physical silence that fell after Kat spoke was not an absence of sound. It was a replete vacuum, filled entirely by unspoken history and mutual shock. The clatter of cutlery, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the nervous shifting in chairs, every minute sound was amplified, serving only to underscore the colossal weight of the untruth that had just been shattered. Kat's words, "I already had mine. You got invitations," were not merely a disclosure, they were a performative utterance, an act that, through its very articulation, changed the reality of the room. It transformed a polite family gathering into a courtroom drama, where the evidence, the very invitations themselves, had been intentionally suppressed. The historical element here is not a date or a battle, but a fundamental human condition, the epistemological crisis of believing a known reality when confronted by a carefully constructed counternarrative. For centuries, philosophers and rhetoricians have studied the power of silence as a tool of control, how the lack of affirmation or the deliberate omission of fact can sculpt a victim's self-perception. In Kat's childhood, her mother's curated silence regarding her achievements was a form of negationism, a subtle but effective means of making Kat's triumphs feel minor, accidental, or unworthy of inclusion in the family's grand histoire. This systematic exclusion of the second child's life is a parallel to the historical practice of damnatio memoriae in ancient Rome, where an emperor's name or image was physically erased from public monuments to retroactively destroy his legacy. Lily, in her gatekeeping role, was executing a modern, domestic damnatio memoriae against her sister, believing that by destroying the physical evidence, the invitations, she could destroy the social reality, the wedding. The advanced vocabulary here is crucial, replete, adjective, meaning completely filled or supplied, emphasizing that the silence was not empty, performative utterance, noun phrase, a term from linguistics, J.L. Austin. For a sentence that does not describe reality but enacts or brings about a new reality, epistemological crisis, noun phrase, a profound loss of faith in one's ability to know the truth, negationism, noun. The denial or minimizing of historical events, and damnatio memoriae. Latin phrase, the practice of officially condemning a deceased person's memory. The emotional development for Kat in this first stage is a shift from stoic endurance to calm agency. She is no longer reacting, she is directing. Her decision to use the tracking receipts, the digital paper trail of accountability, is a masterclass in modern self-advocacy. She chose the undeniable, irrefutable evidence of the digital age to counteract the ancient, fluid tool of familial denial. Her father's whispered denial, "We never got them," was the final confirmation Kat needed. The system of denial was active and operating at full capacity. This knowledge, though painful, provides an unflinching foundation for the truth that she is about to build. This moment of setting down the fork and the phone is the fulcrum of her journey, the precise point where the weight of the past is balanced by the force of her future. The philosophical teaching embedded here is the Socratic imperative to know thyself, extended to include the brave corollary: know the reality of those around you, even if it hurts. Kat's new life in Seattle, her job, and her relationship with Ethan represent the diaspora of self-discovery. The necessary geographical and emotional separation required to find an environment where one's inherent value is not subject to negotiation or approval. Ethan's family provided a non-transactional form of love, a radical departure from the conditional affection Kat had always known. The modern relevance to English learning lies in the power of verisimilitude, the appearance of being true or real. The family's perfection was a superficial verisimilitude maintained by rhetorical suppression. Kat's use of concrete evidence shattered the illusion. How often have we accepted a narrative, be it about ourselves or our family, simply because the cost of challenging its verisimilitude felt too high? The meticulous presentation of the evidence, the zoomed-in signature, the postal tracking log, the email access record, was Kat's intellectual and emotional masterpiece, a carefully constructed argument presented with devastating perspicacity. It wasn't an explosion of anger, it was the cool, impartial application of logic, which is often far more potent than fury. The historical depth of this moment touches upon the fundamental role of documentation in shaping civilization. From the Rosetta Stone confirming the trilingual decree of Ptolemy V to the Doomsday Book detailing Norman land ownership in England, records have always served as the bedrock against which personal accounts are measured. Kat's phone, holding the receipts, was her personal doomsday book, mapping the exact coordinates of her betrayal. The advanced vocabulary in this chapter hinges on intellectual and moral precision, perspicacity, noun, the quality of having a ready insight into things, impartial, adjective, treating all rivals or disputants equally, excoriate, verb, to severely criticize or attack, equivocation, noun, the use of ambiguous language to conceal the truth, and mendacity, noun, untruthfulness or dishonesty. Lily's initial equivocation, I don't remember. Maybe sometimes I grabbed the mail, but I didn't see any invitations, was a reflex of the lifelong performance that had been her shield. But in this digital age, where every transaction leaves a trace, the old ways of evasion are insufficient. The philosophical teaching here resonates with Kant's categorical imperative, particularly the notion that one must act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. Lily acted on the maxim that her sister's life was disposable. Kat, by exposing the truth, acted on the maxim that truth must prevail over comfortable fiction. The emotional development Kat experiences is the transition from wounded child to incorruptible witness. She does not need to excoriate Lily verbally. The evidence speaks with a chilling impartiality that no amount of hysterical denial can overcome. The moment Lily's mendacity crumbled, the family structure, built on the unspoken agreement to center Lily's reality, began its catastrophic collapse. The father's disbelief, "You didn't see 4 packages from your sister," was the first tiny tremor of his own disillusionment, the initial crack in his carefully maintained neutrality. This chapter is also a crucial lesson for English learners in understanding rhetorical fallacies, specifically the red herring fallacy, which Lily attempted to employ when she snapped, "It's not my job to track everyone's mail." Kat's quiet response, letting the accusation hang without rushing to fill the silence, demonstrates the superior counter-tactic, refusing to engage in the fallacy and keeping the focus immutably on the evidence. This restraint is the mark of true power. The modern relevance here is the increasing requirement for digital literacy as a tool for personal safety and accountability. Kat's story serves as a contemporary parable. In a world saturated with digital transactions, the evidence of our lives, both good and bad, is often permanently recorded. A lesson that extends beyond family drama into legal and professional ethics. When confronted with undeniable proof, why does the human mind so often double down on equivocation and denial rather than embrace the liberating discomfort of truth? The climax of the confrontation was not the revelation of the hidden invitations, but Lily's fragmented, desperate counterattack. "She just exists and makes everyone feel what I asked softly. Makes everyone feel what she shot to her feet. Feel guilty. Feel small. Feel like she doesn't even have to try." This outburst was the lacerating, unvarnished truth, the psychological core of the betrayal, and the moment Kat fully steps into the role of the quiet disruptor. This is the confessional arc, where the true motive is revealed to be not mere malice, but envy masked as righteous indignation. Lily's resentment was rooted in Kat's unintentional perfection, the quiet competence that required no staging, no grand production. The philosophical teaching shifts here to Carl Jung's concept of the shadow archetype. Lily had projected her own suppressed feelings of inadequacy and her fear of being ordinary onto Kat, effectively making Kat the repository for all the unacknowledged imperfections Lily refused to accept in herself. By hiding the invitations, Lily was attempting to hide the threat of Kat's quiet happiness, which stood as a stark, unphotoshopped contrast to her own ostentatious September spectacle. The advanced vocabulary focuses on the intensity of emotional truth and psychological concepts: lacerating, adjective, deeply hurtful or wounding; unvarnished, adjective, plain and honest; ostentatious, adjective, characterized by vulgar or pretentious display; invidious, adjective, likely to arouse resentment or anger in others; and anathema, noun, something or someone that is intensely disliked or loathed. The mother's desperate question: why would Lily ever hide your invitations? Why would she sabotage your wedding? That's ridiculous, becomes the locus classicus of the family's delusion, the foundational lie they needed to believe to maintain their chosen reality. Kat's response: because my wedding happened in June. Hers was in September, reduces the entire drama to a single, brutal, and utterly unromantic fact: competition. This competition was invidious to the point of sabotage. Historically, the comparison between two sisters or two siblings echoes in countless myths and narratives, from the biblical story of Jacob and Esau to the mythological rivalry between Artemis and Apollo. These tales illustrate the profound human difficulty of celebrating individual worth without falling prey to the corrosive effects of comparison. Kat's subsequent statement: "You did your best for Lily. For me, you did the bare minimum and called it fairness," is the definitive statement that redefines the family dynamic. It strips away the mother's self-deception that her actions were simply a benign laissez-faire approach to Kat's upbringing. The emotional development for Kat here is a powerful moment of cognitive reframing. She stops interpreting the past as her own failure to be enough and correctly interprets it as their failure to provide basic, equitable care. The linguistic lesson here is in the power of euphemism and dysphemism. The mother's actions were euphemized as doing our best or fairness, while Kat's entire life was dysphemized by her sister as being effortlessly good and making everyone feel guilty. Kat's final statement in this interaction reclaims the reality from the linguistic distortion. In what ways does a reliance on euphemism allow us to avoid the difficult work of acknowledging and correcting our deepest emotional or relational failures? The fourth paragraph marks the inexorable move toward finality, the moment of self-determination where Kat draws the clean final line. Her rising from the table and the quiet, firm scrape of the chair are the symbolic acts of a long-overdue divorce from her past. The physical act of standing is a declaration of sovereignty. She is moving from the role of the object of the family's neglect to the subject of her own destiny. Her final, devastating, yet calmly delivered message, "I didn't lose my family tonight. I just stopped pretending I had 1 inch," is a profound philosophical statement on the nature of truth and delusion. It posits that the damage was pre-existing, and her action was merely the acknowledgement of an already ruptured reality. This is the apotheosis of Kat's emotional journey. The historical context for this departure is rooted in the concept of agency and personal volition across civilizations. In Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, the greatest freedom one possesses is the power to choose one's response and to focus exclusively on what is within one's power, the internal locus of control. Kat's family, their remorse, their belated regrets, these were all external and outside her control. Her decision to leave, to cease her participation in their shared fiction, was the ultimate exercise of her volition and the highest expression of urity, Greek for excellence or virtue. Advanced vocabulary captures the finality and philosophical depth: inexorable, adjective, impossible to stop or prevent; sovereignty, noun, supreme and independent authority or power; apotheosis, noun, The highest point in the development of something, volition, noun, the faculty or power of using one's will, and cynicism, noun, an inclination to believe that people are motivated purely by self-interest. The father's plea, "We can talk," and the mother's desperate, "We can fix this," are attempts to re-establish the old terms, to pull Kat back into the drama where they held the power. Kat's rebuttal, "You can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge," I replied. "And you refused for years," is the definitive stipulation, the non-negotiable condition for any potential future relationship. It refuses the quick, transactional fix and demands the excruciating, honest work of true acknowledgement. The final words spoken at the door, "You didn't miss my wedding. You chose not to see it," are the most crucial linguistic and emotional lesson of the entire script. They are an elegant dissection of the difference between omission, an accident of memory or circumstance, and commission, a deliberate choice. The idiom being clarified here is missing out. Her family didn't miss out on her wedding. They made a conscious, active choice to disregard her life event, transforming an absence into an act of aggression. The silence that follows the door closing is the final character in the drama. Unlike the replete silence of the first paragraph, the silence of accusation and shock, this new silence is sanctuary. It is the sound of a slate wiped clean, a declaration of independence. For the English learner, this chapter highlights the power of active voice in expressing self-determination. Kat is the subject of every key verb. I stood, I said, I picked up, I walked, I opened. This active voice structurally mirrors her philosophical choice to become the active agent of her own life, moving away from the passive position she had occupied for decades. If Uridi, true excellence, requires focusing only on what is within our volition, what is the first illusion we must relinquish to claim our sovereignty? The closing chapter moves seamlessly from the dramatic climax to the quiet, enduring aftermath, the slow, laborious work of building a life based on authentic connections. The simple image of Ethan's unconditional presence, no questions, no judgment, just presence, is the profound counterpoint to the family's performative absence. This is the definition of chosen kinship versus the accident of consanguinity. The philosophical teaching culminates in the simple, yet radical, truth offered by Helen, "Your family here. Because you matter." This statement encapsulates the shift from a conditional self-worth, which Kat's birth family enforced, to an intrinsic self-worth, which Ethan's family affirmed. The historical relevance is found in the ancient and universal concept of the bond of fellowship, the ties of loyalty and mutual respect that, throughout history, have often proven stronger and more reliable than mere bloodlines. From the tribal loyalty of the early Germanic comitatus to the spiritual kinship sought in monastic or philosophical orders, humans have always sought out a collective where they are valued for their being, not their utility. Advanced vocabulary emphasizes the quality of authentic connection and recovery, enduring, adjective, continuing or lasting a long time, laborious, adjective, requiring considerable effort and time, consanguinity, noun. The quality of being descended from the same ancestor as another person, extirpate, verb, to root out and destroy completely, and amalgamation, noun, the action or process of combining or uniting. The family's subsequent actions, Lily's email apology and the father's silent mailing of the buried invitation, are not just narrative details. They represent the slow, painful process of their own reckoning. The father's action is particularly poignant, an implicit acknowledgement of the truth that transcends words. However, the mother's continuing absence, her refusal to reach out, provides the final, ineluctable answer. Kat's interpretation of that absence as not a wound, but an answer, is the ultimate sign of her healing. She has successfully extirpated the old, painful desire for her mother's approval. The final summation: family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up. It's who listens. It's who stays is a universal wisdom that provides the modern relevance for English learning. It utilizes the simple, powerful, and accessible language of action, shows up, listens, stays, to communicate a complex philosophical idea. The message is an amalgamation of emotional, philosophical, and practical wisdom, proving that the most profound truths do not require obscurantist language, but clarity. The final idiom Kat clarifies is the meaning of holding you. Her mother held her like a chore. Helen held her with warmth and certainty. This subtle distinction between the denotation, literal meaning, and connotation, implied emotional meaning, of the word hold is a valuable lesson in the nuance required for advanced English comprehension. The script ends by offering a community, asking the viewer to participate in the act of shared vulnerability, the same non-transactional presence that Kat finally found in her own life. In your own life, what are the 3 verbs, the core actions, that define your chosen kinship, and how do they differ from the definitions of consanguinity you were taught?